Hello, darling. Um, Welcome to your reading. I have just spent a little bit of time getting the space ready. I want to show you. I have an actual tarot table now. Um, so we have all the things going on here, including Saint Judas back there, Saint Jude. I've always resonated with him because he was the patron saint of lost causes. I always felt like a lost cause sometimes. So I like to keep him around. I'm sorry my background is a little bit messy. My room is kind of messy, but behind me, this direction is my bed, and behind me that direction is my workspace and desk and all of that. So I have a huge room, which I absolutely love. So um, I mentioned that we're going to be working with the Fountain Tarot deck, and actually those are some that I've given. That's the back. I've given you, I think, maybe one of the mini readings I did a couple weeks ago on those. So you may be a little familiar with the imagery. And then something I did for myself recently that I wanted to do with you is I want to pull one of my archetype cards. Carolyn Mace has these cards here, and I absolutely love them. If you're not familiar with archetypes, I would highly recommend doing some research into them. And it's essentially a Jungian, Carl Jung thing, which, I mean, you've been in that direction. You probably know what I'm talking about. But it's essentially the idea that we all carry within us kind of these pre-existing storylines. And a storyline isn't really the right way to say it, but they're these um, maybe prototypes of, I think of it in terms of literature. So um, it's usually a certain kind of character. And we carry with us a combination of them usually, but a few are more prevalent in our lives or more dominant in our lives. So, but I love using them because I think they can kind of set the tone for what we're working with. And so I'm going to go ahead and draw one of those first before I lay out a spread for you. Okay. There are some that are blank, and it's funny because I had a feeling I was going to draw one of these. Take that for whatever it is, however it resonates to you. But the whole thing was like you can use blank ones to kind of create your own archetypes. Okay, so I drew the prince, and so what I love about these cards is they show you the light attribute up here, and then they show you the shadow attribute down here, and and that's the beauty, is that there's always a light and a shadow to the sides of the parts of ourselves. So Prince, the light attribute is romantic charm and potential for power. And the shadow attribute is using power for self-aggrandizement. So, yeah, I'm going to leave this to you. We're going to use this, again, like I said, kind of as a reference point for what the reading is going to entail. And if you feel like that resonates with you, you might find yourself wrestling between the light and the shadow. So hopefully this will give us some more perspective on that. As I was shuffling here just a bit ago, because I wanted to shuffle and kind of clear my deck, and I put a little piece of citrine on there before reading. Citrine is supposed to be really good for clearing. So we can focus on that a little bit. It's a beautiful rock. I love it. I also have these guys present. It's a little orange guy and a green guy, and I honestly, I think this is green calcite. That's what's coming to mind, but I don't know. Honestly, no. And I think a friend gave me this one, so I don't know what it's called. But these are the ones. Actually, there's one more that wants to be on the table. Let me go grab that. That's my amethyst. She normally sits on my dresser, but she wanted to come out today. So we'll add her to the collection here. All right. What I was saying was I did have a card jump out when I was kind of clearing your deck. So I'm putting that one in the central. And to be really honest, I don't know which direction it goes. So that might be an interesting play on what's going on with you. So let me go ahead and draw some cards. And we'll get this going. And because these cards are still new to me, in fact, a friend of mine trimmed them. So they used to have like a white frame and the name of the card underneath. So I don't actually, some of them I don't know what they are. So since I'm just new to this deck, I'm only going to read upright cards. I love these cards because the imagery is just so powerful. All right, so let me show you your spread real quick. Let me see if I can get it all in the frame. Okay. All right, I'll start breaking it down. So the card that jumped out, which I think is interesting, is the One of Swords. And the reason I can't tell if this is upright or not is because there are little ripples here. So it looks like it's coming up out of the water. But then these geometric shapes look like buildings. So it's almost like it could be stabbing down into the buildings. So what is interesting to me is that this Prince card is just, okay, so I'm gonna do something I don't normally do, which is show you the resolution card at the beginning, because I want to kind of illustrate where my mind is going with these things, because the resolution card is the Prince of Swords. And so what I find interesting about that is that this sword, this One of Swords, is, in a sense, there is this contrast of light and shadow here. So it's like almost like, here we go again, Prince of Swords, Prince card, dealing with light and shadow, sword, light and shadow. It's just all coming together. Okay, so this is you in the present moment, which is also what our Prince card has indicated, that there is this juggling between light and shadow. Now, what is interesting about this card to me is that the sword is coming out of the water, out of the area where the light is, and going in the direction of the shadow. And so I'm wondering if this is not all leaning toward the shadowy side of things, which, according to our archetype card, is using power for aggrandizement. Let me see if the book has anything more to say than that, because that feels very, I don't know, maybe that resonates with you, but I want to get a little bit more perspective on it. Okay. Okay. So, true prince is a ruler in training who serves the people he will someday lead, whether in a literal, figurative, or spiritual kingdom. Characteristics of generosity, fairness, compassion, and wisdom should be well balanced. Shadow Prince can manifest as a young man with great feelings of entitlement, who uses his position and power purely to advance his own interests without regard for the needs of others. Look for a history of preparing for leadership in one particular realm. So, what I find interesting is, in the shadow on the cards is using power for self-aggrandizement, and that feels a little rough to me. That feels a little maybe unfair, but I like the way this goes into it, where it's the great feelings of entitlement and using power and position to advance own interests. I think that's something to keep in mind. Also, the characteristics of generosity, fairness, compassion, and wisdom should be well balanced. And I can see that as that is a scale. Now, that I think the way that reads, it sounds like that should be well balanced. That maybe the scale is tipped toward yourself, but I think the scale can also be tipped toward others, where you can have these characteristics of generosity, fairness, compassion, and wisdom leaning too much toward people outside of you and not enough toward yourself. So I think that's what's interesting about this Prince card is, or in at least with the sword, there seems to be about a leaning toward the shadow aspects. And that's what I just described, which is that imbalance. And that's an imbalance, again, either it's leaning too much towards you or it's leaning too much away from you. But somehow it's imbalanced. So in our spread here, the most recent in recent past, you have the Six of Pentacles. And the thing that immediately stands out to me here is the heart shape made by, these are like kind of like Celtic symbols, but there's, you can go this way and then you can go that way and you can make a heart. Pentacles symbolize any kind of material object, so earth, that's very earthy, very earthbound. It can symbolize wealth, it can symbolize money. That's why a lot of times in Pentacles there are these little gold discs look like coins, because it's abundance of some kind. In your near future, you have the Eight of Cups. And what I find interesting about this is this kind of lone, shadowy figure here in the back. And cups symbolize emotion. It's almost like I was going to say being in the darkness. And I think what's interesting about that is this recent past is a much lighter card. And this is a much darker card. And so I'm seeing that we are transitioning here through the One of Swords from, it affirms to me that there is this tendency to lean toward the shadowy side of things. Um, I don't like that the person in this card has turned their back on the cups. There is a sense of turning back on feelings and emotions, which would lead me to believe, with the shadow side of things, that the balance is actually skewing more toward others than it is skewing towards yourself. So when you really consider the shadow attributes of Prince, I don't want you to get stuck on um, I don't want you to get stuck on that first statement, using power for self-aggrandizement, because what I really want you to come back to is those four characteristics, and I can read them again actually. If you didn't write them down before, you might want to write them down now. Generosity, fairness, compassion, and wisdom. I really want you to be concerned about that pillar of things leaning more toward others than they are leaning toward yourself, because it seems like that's the direction this is going. Um, and the card overlaying these is the Four of Swords, and it can be a little bit hard to tell, but this guy is um, essentially blocked in, and um, he's like he's insulated. He's very insular, um, and swords usually is logical. So words, communication, um, arguments. It's using these things to essentially, you're using logic to distance yourself emotionally. And I'm a Gemini, so I understand that wholeheartedly. Geminis hide behind their. We get lost in our mind a lot, and because of that, we avoid paying attention to and nurturing our feelings. Um, I get a strong sense that that is what is going on here. Um, uh, okay, so down here in the hopes area is the One of Wands. And this is only one of two wand cards that are showing up in your spread here. And what is fascinating to me about this is wands are connected with spiritual realm. So it's like almost like your current self is wrestling between the material and the physical, um, and the logical and mental. It's kind of going. There's a tension here, but in your hopes, there's a spiritual card, and I find that really fascinating because um, it's a secret hope. I think, which is that actually, I think it's that actually deep down, what's going to help you through this process is nurturing your spiritual self and connecting with that somehow. And I'm not saying religion. I want to be very clear about that, because some may hear spiritual and think, oh, I got to go back to church. I haven't been to church in a long time. Their mind automatically goes toward a religious practice, or um, I need to answer phone calls from that group about, I don't know, whatever. You go to the religion formation. I'm talking spiritual here. And spiritual it's your spirit self. What does your spirit self want? How does your spirit self want to connect to the spirit world? Um, do you fantasize about having like really deep, intimate connections with the spirit world? Do you long for and I'm thinking, something kind of trippy, where you can do they have these things where they're called astral plane projection. uh, where you actually kind of cast your spirit body out and let it float out in the spirit world. um, are you craving meditation? Are you really long? And by meditation, again, I don't mean the religious practice of meditation. I mean using meditation to bridge the gap between yourself, your spirit self, and the spirit world beyond you. Are you wanting to branch out? Are you curious about other things? And if so, that's okay. That's what your secret hope is here. And it's okay to honor that. Your secret fear um, is that you're actually completely alone and that you're doing all of this alone. Um, and she just got really emotional. Maybe because I can resonate with that. So, where do you go from here? There are several steps. It's not crazy, okay? What you're craving with the spiritual side of things, it's not crazy. The reality is the spiritual world is infinite and infinitely abundant. None of us knows for sure what is out there. None of us knows what form that has taken on earth. None of us knows ours. I truly believe we have a higher self that we are connected to. And I kind of have viewed it as like we're down on earth and there's kind of this like floating ship, and that up on that floating ship is our higher self, and they've got the little periscope, and they can see ahead. They can see ahead and they can see all around. And if we really tune into that higher self, they will give us direction. Avoid, go slightly to the right, go directly to the left, avoid this, take that route right now or you're going to miss it. And so that's one aspect of spirituality that I subscribe to. I remember when I was first getting into tarot, being really craving tarot. I remember craving going to New Agey stores. I remember there was just kind of this insatiable thirst to explore everything. And if that's where you are, I just want to let you know that it's okay. Because I think what you're doing right now has led you to believe that you're actually completely alone. And that's inaccurate, friend. I mean, that's why it's a fear. Most fears are unjustified. I mean, in the sense of they're very real to us, but they're not real. They're not real, capital R real. Okay. So, where do we go from here? Where do you go from here? Well, step one, you got to make friends with your feelings. This card cracks me up because when I was practice reading with a friend of mine, she said this was Cat Stevens. She's like, and you got Cat Stevens in your reading. This is Nine of Cups. As you can see, this is a much more intimate interaction with cups, with emotions, than the direction you were heading towards. So I think what's beautiful about this is that just because you are heading in a direction doesn't mean you can't change that. Even becoming aware of it, wakening up to it, you're already beginning to change, even if you don't realize it. because you're going to immediately start to really scrutinize the path you're on and go, wait, oh, wait, is this me disconnecting from my feelings? Oh, wait, is this me overanalyzing things? Oh, wait, is this me using logic to avoid certain parts of myself? So this is hope to me that there's actually another destination for you. There's this guy. Also 9. Oh, wait. Okay, that's 10. Still interesting. 2 9s here. 9 of Wands. And so, to me, this is saying that you're going to take what I've been saying with the spirituality component, and you're going to begin to build your own spiritual practice, your own spiritual perspective on the world. As you can see, he's laid down, he's tried things, he's laid them down, he's used them, he's building on them, and he's got 2 more things in his hand. Now, he's not quite to the top of his little pyramid here, but trying things, okay? You're trying things. This is a little advanced for you, so don't think you have to immediately go out and try all the things, okay? Same with this. This is a little advanced. Embracing and hugging your emotions, holding them close to your heart, your chest, it's a little advanced. That's why these are future projections of where you can go. If you focus on leaning toward the light, writing the balance of these Prince attributes, the light and shadow attributes, this is where you're going, okay? So it's very hopeful. If you continue on the path you were on, you're going to get this guy, okay? Death by logic. I've actually never used that term, but it's perfect for this card. 10 of Swords. And it's a very haunting image. Most tarot decks show the person being run through by the swords and the 10 of Swords. At least ones I've encountered. Let me see if I can. Feel suddenly like I need to pull out the 10 of Swords in other decks. So give me just a second and see if I can find one. I love this fountain deck so much because I love my old decks as well. If I feel that that's the one I need to use, I absolutely will. But I just feel like this fountain deck gives such more depth. 10 of Swords, 10 of Swords. But I thought of my tarot of the old path. And I wanted to, when I thought of this 10 of Swords, and I wanted to pull that out and see, I don't know, see if it brings anything else. I'm just going with what I'm being pulled to do, lady. That's right, it's taking a minute. Of course, it's going to be at the very end. I had a feeling. Yeah. Yeah. So you can see how this guy is, it's almost like he's appearing, he's been on the battlefield and he's just taken down. And the reason I think it's a warning card that your logic, um, your reasoning, your rationaling, um, it's causing a lot of the problems here. And I think it plays into me with those four characteristics that I talked about, leaning them toward other people. You have your reasons, right, for doing that. You have your rationale, you have your arguments with, and they're all with yourself, right? They're not um your emotional and spiritual selves are calling for rebalancing, and obligation is a word that is coming up. um you are you're obligating yourself to others, and before obligating yourself to yourself. And your rationale, your reasoning, your logic behind all of that is actually going to be your downfall. You need to reconnect with your spiritual self and your emotional self to navigate your way through this. Lead literally with your heart. Um, and then what we find here is the Prince of Sword is the resolution to all this. And there is, look at this. This card is very light. I love that. But it's also balanced in the middle. And there's a sense of mastership, right? Learning how to wield the sword. So it's not about completely divorcing yourself from your mind, your logic, your thoughts. It's about learning how to wield those thoughts appropriately, okay? So a little personal story, and I'm sharing this only for illustration purposes. When I started going to counseling in the spring, my therapist and I were working on what she called my inner family. So we were identifying different parts of my psyche, essentially, identifying their roles, their motives, even as far as like what they like to wear and what they like to eat for dinner and who their friends were and what they did for fun, or what they didn't do for fun. There's some that were not fun. As I kind of reflected on those over time, a really shadowy character showed up in my meditation, and after some questioning and wondering, and that character that came forward was my abusive inner father. And he is the one that usually carries all of the bad things that I tell myself. I'm not worth it. I'm never going to get this right. So on and so forth. Okay. So when I discovered him, I rallied up some of my other masculine parts, and I confronted him, and I told him he's not allowed to hurt me anymore. I pictured a couch and told him to sit on the couch. You need to sit here. You're not going anywhere. Kind of like, you have a teenager or someone in the room. You're like, sit down. Now, here's why I didn't tell him to go away. Because he's still a part of me. And he, in his misguided way, thinks that he's serving me. Okay? So, if I send him away, I am, in a sense, pushing a part of myself away, and I'm not giving that part of myself space to heal. Okay? So over time, what I came back and did was, and what I still have to do pretty routinely, is give him other words to say. Okay? So you can't tell me I'm a failure, but you can tell me I'm beautiful. You can't tell me I'll never be good at this. You can tell me I'm strong and that I'm going to handle it because I've always handled it. And I can't even tell you what a change goes through me when he wields language, because language is powerful, right? When he yields that language with me in a strong, uplifting, constructive way instead of just slicing me down. So it's not that your mind, it's time to address your mind. That's what's going on here, all right? There's an aspect of your mind that is pushing the spiritual and emotional bodies out, or there is that aspect of your mind that needs nurturing and love and care, okay? Just like my abusive father did. Now, I have on occasion pictured myself embracing him and telling him that I love him. So I've been able to give him a little bit of that nurturing care. For me, it's been more so, I'm not going to banish you. You still get a place at the table, but you don't get to do the things you used to do. You have to do them the way I want you to do them. So make friends with your mind as well, with the attributes of you that you've outgrown them, to be really honest. You know, you're in a really tense and intense growing phase. And I don't know if you do you remember being a teenager? I remember being a teenager. I would wake up in the middle of the night and my legs would ache. And my mom was like, "Oh, those are growing pains." I was like, "Fuck this. I don't want to be tall if that's what it takes." But you're in the midst of growing pains. You're in the midst of this really awkward space of figuring out how to grow into and mature and develop other aspects of yourself. So if it feels awkward, if it feels shadowy, that's because it is. You're learning to lean on parts of yourselves that haven't had that muscle built up yet. So first you need to flex the muscle, right? You think about this guy, okay? He didn't get to the top of his pyramid. You notice he's not like squeezing the side of the pyramid with his knees, inching his way up. No, he has learned to build muscles along the way. You're not going to get to the top just by muscling your way up. You're going to get there by flexing the muscle little by little, trying this, trying that, connecting with this, loving on that, okay, little by little. And, really stopping in those moments where you feel like your thoughts are out of control, and then maybe saying, okay, you've had your time to speak. Heart, what would you like? And then listen to it and trust it and do what it says, okay? This Prince thing is just so. I would recommend, like, you can take it at an archetype quiz. I think it's just archetypes.com. You can kind of take an archetype thing, but you can also look up the archetypes there. You may consider looking up the Prince archetype to see what more it has for you. It's fascinating that it came up twice in our cards here. I feel like that's all I have for you. I think it was a lot. There's a lot of light at the end of this tunnel. I wanted to share with you very briefly what my astrologer, I just listened to he does these, he calls them monthly megascopes. And it's kind of an overview of the month. And he was sharing that October he's calling it Awkward October. And he said, really, the answers that we are looking for are not going to come until closer to the end of the month. Venus is actually, I think it's Venus. Venus is in retrograde currently. So we're leveling up. All right, we're graduating. We are working to get to the next level. So you're not alone. You are certainly not alone. I am right there with you, sister. This is a very confusing, frustrating, and awkward season for me as well. I'm wrestling through some things, and but it's really the thing that he really stresses and that I have learned to stress is, what does my heart want? What does my heart want? How do I use my heart to guide me? How do I use my heart to help me make decisions? Because ultimately, I think the heart, when it's talking about the higher power thing, the heart is our connection point. It is those messages being beamed down to our heart, and it's only our heart is the only part of us that understands that can interpret those messages. Our mind thinks it can, but our mind still can only see what's in front of and around. And one thing that he said recently was, our mind only knows what it's already experienced. Our heart knows beyond. Okay, so tap into your heart. Eventually, you'll be able to hold that sword at your heart. Right, that's almost dead heart center right there. That's what you're working toward, my love. You are working toward a place where your heart guides you. You're able to wield logic and communication and words. You're able to be in control of them instead of them controlling you. And ultimately, it's your heart that will be guiding you. Okay, as usual, ask me any questions, or feel free to. I can't guarantee I'll have an answer for you, but I had a lot. We went over about 10 minutes, which is totally fine with me because there was a lot here to share and I really wanted to get all of it out. So many blessings to you. Thank you so much for trusting me and for allowing me to share with you. I love you, darling. Talk to you soon.